Excel formulas and functions, the heart of everything. Let's be honest, Excel's real magic isn't in organizing data into neat little rows and columns. That's helpful, sure. But the moment you start building formulas, that's when everything changes. Suddenly, you're not just storing information, you're making it work for you. And here's the thing, formulas are just calculations. That's it. Nothing scary, nothing complicated at their core. Want to add up a bunch of numbers? That's a formula. Need to figure out an average or find the biggest value in a list? Also, formulas. They're the backbone of pretty much everything powerful in Excel. So, what's the difference between a formula and a function? You'll hear people use these terms like they mean the same thing, and honestly, they kind of do. But if we're being precise, here's how it breaks down. A formula is any calculation you build in Excel. A function is a pre-built tool that helps you construct that formula faster and smarter. Think of functions as shortcuts that Excel has already figured out for you. Head over to the Formulas tab, and you'll spot something called the function library. There are over 500 functions tucked away in there. 500! Now, before you panic, you're never going to need all of them. Many are super specialized, designed for engineers or accountants or scientists doing very niche work. But there's a solid 15 to 20 that you'll reach for constantly. Master those, and you're golden. Every formula starts the same way. Here's your first rule, and it's non-negotiable. Every single formula begins with an equal sign. Every single one. Why? Because that's how Excel knows you're writing a formula instead of just typing random text. Skip the equal sign, and Excel treats your entry like a label or note, nothing more. So let's say you've got two numbers sitting in your worksheet, 10 and 20. You want to add them together. You could type equals 10 plus 20. Press enter, and boom, 30 appears. Simple enough, right? But wait, there's a catch. The problem with hard-coding numbers. If you build your formula by typing the actual numbers directly, you've created what's called a hard-coded formula. And here's why that's a problem. If those original numbers change, your formula doesn't update. It's frozen in time, still calculating based on values that no longer exist. Let me paint the picture. You typed equals 10 plus 20 and got 30. Now someone updates that 10 to a 5. What does your formula show? Still 30, because it doesn't know anything changed. It was never connected to those cells in the first place. The fix? Use cell references instead. Say your 10 lives in cell F3 and your 20 is in F4. Instead of hard coding, you'd write equals F3 plus F4. Now, when F3 changes from 10 to 5, your result automatically updates to 25. No extra work required. The formula is alive. It responds to whatever data lives in those cells. This is huge, especially when numbers are constantly shifting, which, let's face it, happens all the time in real-world spreadsheets. What happens when you have a lot of numbers? Okay, adding two cells together is manageable. But what if you've got a whole column of monthly sales data? January through December, 12 values stacked on top of each other? Are you really going to type equals C3 plus C4 plus C5 plus C6 plus C7 plus C8 plus C9 plus C10 plus C11 plus C12 plus C13 plus C14? You could, but honestly, that's painful. And imagine if you had 10,000 rows. Nobody's got time for that. This is exactly where functions save the day. Enter the SUM function. SUM is probably the first function anyone learns, and for good reason. It's incredibly useful and beautifully simple. Start typing equals SUM and watch what happens. A drop-down appears showing you functions that match what you're typing. This is called IntelliSense, and it's like Excel's way of finishing your sentences. Super helpful when you can't quite remember the exact name of a function. Once you see SUM at the top of that list, hit Tab to select it. Excel automatically adds an open parentheses or bracket, depending on where you're from. Everything inside those parentheses is called the function's arguments, basically the information you're feeding the function so it knows what to calculate. For SUM, the argument is simple. which cells do you want to add up? Click the first cell in your range, drag down to the last one, and you'll see something like equals sum of C3 to C14. That colon between C3 and C14 means from C3 through C14. Every cell in between gets included. Close the parentheses, hit enter, and you've got your total in an instant. One tiny note, always close your brackets. If you open one, you need to close it. Mismatched parentheses cause errors, and they can be surprisingly tricky to spot later on. Those little green triangles, don't ignore them. You might notice a small green triangle appearing in a corner of a cell after you've entered a formula. That's Excel's error checking feature giving you a heads up. It's not always an actual error. Sometimes it's just Excel being cautious, but it's worth investigating. We'll get into error checking more deeply later on. The operators you'll use every day. Addition isn't the only game in town. Excel handles subtraction, multiplication, and division just as easily. You just need to know the right symbols. Addition, plus, subtraction, minus, multiplication, asterisk, division, /. So if you wanted to subtract F4 from F5, you'd write equals F5 minus F4. Multiplication equals F5 times F4. Division equals F5 divided by F4. Pretty intuitive once you know where those keys live on your keyboard. When math gets tricky, the order of operations. Here's where things get interesting and maybe a little frustrating if you're not expecting it. Let's say you type equals 10 plus 2 divided by 2. What do you think the answer is? If you're thinking 6, because 10 plus 2 is 12, divided by 2 is 6, I get it. Makes sense, right? But Excel gives you 11. Wait, what? This is all about something called the order of operations. You might remember it from school. BODMAS, PEMDAS, BODMAS. The acronym varies depending on where you grew up, but the principle is universal. Here's the hierarchy. Brackets or parentheses, orders, exponents, square roots, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. Excel follows this sequence religiously. So when it sees equals 10 plus 2 divided by 2, it doesn't read left to right like a sentence. It looks for divisions first. It calculates 2 divided by 2, gets 1, and then adds that to 10, hence 11. If you actually wanted Excel to add 10 and 2 before dividing, you need to force that calculation with brackets. Equals, parentheses, 10 plus 2, close parentheses, divided by 2. Now Excel handles the addition first, 12, then divides by 2, giving you 6. This rule runs through every formula you'll ever build. Get comfortable with it. When your results look weird, check your brackets first. 9 times out of 10, that's where the issue hides. Why this foundation matters. You know what separates people who use Excel from people who truly understand Excel? It's this stuff right here, the fundamental. Knowing why cell references beat hard-coded numbers. Understanding that brackets change everything. Recognizing the difference between a formula and a function. These aren't flashy tricks, but they're the foundation for everything that comes next. So take your time here, experiment, break things on purpose, and figure out why they broke. That's how you learn. And honestly, that's how Excel becomes genuinely fun to use.